Everybody, and welcome to the Strategic Planning Committee. My name's Andrew Paraskos and I'm the chair for today. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. We've got Councillor Swanwick and the sub for Councillor Swanwick is Sharma. Yep, she's happy with that. Item 2, minutes of the meeting on the 21st of July. Any amendments? No, everybody happy? All those in favour? Yeah, thank you very much. Abstain, you weren't here. Thank you very much. Which brings us to the first item, agenda item number 4, which is the application ZG202310. Oh, Chair. Oh, sorry, I've missed one. Declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest? Councillor Katanak. There you go.
I think, like many others, I've had rather a lot of emails with regard to the first item that we will be discussing.
Thank you. I presume we're going to take that as read for everybody. Everybody's had significant emails. And Councillor Packham.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, as of last night, I'd had 102 objections on Eggborough, which I'd actually looked at. I have to say quite a lot of those were duplicates, and some of them included the same typo, which was a bit disappointing, but I did receive them anyway. On the second application, the Harrogate Road one, I do need to declare that over 20 years ago, I carried out some paid consultancy work for the Stockeld estate. Since that time, I've had no contact with the estate or its directors, including in relation to this application. I have been lobbied by local residents, including correspondence from Wetherby Civic Society, Spofforth Park Management Company, and Better Wetherby. My position on the Harrogate Road application is that I come to this meeting with an open mind and my views are not predetermined. When we determine the application, I will reach a view based on the responses to questions I have for officers, all the representations, including those in person to the committee and the issues discussed during the members' debate. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just bring in the legal officer.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Packham, for stating that very clearly. Just a reminder to members, if you have any interest in the application, when they're quite high profile, they've been in the media or social media, just a reminder to members to make that transparency statement so that you're considering the item with an open mind and not predetermining any of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McCartney.
Yeah. I'm the member for the area that includes this planning application, and like all members of the committee, I've had numerous missives from various residents, and this application has been hanging around for some time, but I have managed to sit on the fence. I've not made any public comments about this. Either way. I mean, I've been doing this for 33 years and I know how it works. So I sit here with an open mind and I have not made a decision on how I will be voting.
Thank you very much. We move to agenda item number 4, which is right. Sorry, I've got to declare an interest on item 5, which is the Hallam land application at Spofforth Hill. I shall be speaking on that item if it comes to being presented, and I will have to leave the room after presenting my case. Councillor Arthur.
Thanks, Chair. It's just an item 4. It's mentioned Network Rail quite a few times. I'm an employee of Network Rail, so I'm declaring an interest. It's personal, but it's not prejudicial. I've spoken to the monitoring officer about this before, and he says I can stay and debate and speak.
Thank you. Right. Eventually, we will get to item number 4. Anybody else got any declarations before we move on? Nope. We're all clear. Right. Item 4 is the application, outline application, all matters reserved except for primary means of access for residential development, extra care facility, local centre, primary school, associated infrastructure, landscaping on land at the Whelan Road, Eggborough. We move to Linda now to present.
Thank you, Chair. This application has been returned to Planning Committee following deferral in May for the following reasons: the assessment of the affordable housing provision, a review of housing mix, review of the use of SIL and Section 106, further engagement with Network Rail on service improvements, and a site visit. In summary, with regards to affordable housing, the applicant provided further information, however, no viability report or change to the affordable housing percentage. Officers consider that the 10% provision remains policy compliant. There's been no objection from the affordable housing team, and there is no change to the officer recommendation or assessment on this matter. With regards to housing mix, the applicant has stated that this will be secured through condition 53 at reserve matters. Officers remain satisfied that this is the case. Regarding SIL and Section 106, no consultee has identified a deficiency in the proposed package of obligations or the means of delivery. Regarding Network Rail, no objections have been raised by this consultee. The applicant has submitted a rail infrastructure briefing note which confirms the extent of consultation undertaken with Network Rail and the package of station improvements that have been agreed, and that would be part of the Section 106. It also provides background to the Case for Change business case, which is being prepared by stakeholders for service improvements to the line. SIL payments would help further that case for change. Regarding a site visit, this was undertaken yesterday with members. We visited, reviewed the village, the site from north and from the Whelan Road side and from Kellington Lane, the railway and the school. There is a committee update note. Since publication of the report, a further number of representations have been received, substantial number of objections, and 2 letters in support of the proposal. The recommendation is to grant the application subject to a Section 1 agreement and conditions as set out in the report. For the benefit of members, as a number of you were not present at the May Committee, I'm now going to play the presentation from the May Committee for you. It works. So we'll start again with the presentation. So this is a slide to show you site context. The site lies to the west of the village. Whelan Road lies to the north and Kellington Lane lies to the east. There's a public right-of-way which runs through the site, shown on the purple-blue line. To the south of the site, there is a station and the railway line and the canal. Kellington Village lies to the northwest. Oh, also to point out as well, junction 34 of the M62 also lies further south. An aerial image from Google just again show the site in context. The site's in agricultural use and includes a number of fields with hedges and a number of trees. There's also a couple of ditches that run across the land as well. So this proposal is for outline planning permission, and it's supported by a number of parameters plans because all matters are currently reserved. So the parameters plans, these set the land use, building heights, access, and there's also illustrative master plan and landscape master plan for the site. There is also a design code. So this is the illustrative master plan. It shows the main vehicular access is to the site, the main access being from Whelan Road via a 4-arm roundabout. There's a secondary access to the site from Kellington Lane. That's a priority junction. The master plan indicates the development blocks for each phase of the development, areas of green space, and also the local centre. There are 3 colours shown. The yellowy orange is the site of the proposed school, and then the purple is the site of the extra care facility, and the pink land would be a number of shops. As part of the proposal, it's also putting forward to improve the canal towpath and have improvements to the station as well. This is the access parameters plans, which shows the areas, well, the access points into the site for pedestrian and vehicular use. The orange area to the south is where land is being made available for station improvements. The illustrative landscape framework plan is before you. This landscape is a reserved matter, but this plan sets out the framework for the provision of open space and recreational open space as well. It shows networks of connected open space running through the site, tree-lined streets and the retention of existing trees and hedges. The guiding principles on landscape are contained within the design code, which I'll come to shortly. This plan shows the building heights that are being put forward. These are maximum building heights. So just because the number is shown does not mean that all development in that particular area will be up to the maximum height. In general, the heights are highest towards the east in the village edge, and they reduce down towards the rural edge. For indication, the highest part of the site is this area coloured blue, which corresponds with the local centre, and that's a maximum height of 24.5 metres. And then the lowest height is the teal area to the southwest, and that's 18.5 metres. This is the main site access from Whelan Road. A 4-arm roundabout is being proposed, and it's also a speed reduction to 30 miles an hour westwards from the village. And then this is the secondary access to Kellington Lane, which would be a priority junction. There's also a package of highway improvements along Kellington Lane, which includes new crossings and traffic calming. An indicative phasing plan has been provided with the application, which indicates that the development will start in the northeast of the site and progress to the south and to the west. Condition 7, which has been proposed, requires an updated phasing plan to be submitted as part of reserved matters. So at the moment, this is just an indication of how the site will be built out. So all matters are reserved, and this is a phased development. So a design code has been provided, which sets out the requirements in terms of design, character and appearance, scale and access, and connectivity through the site. The code will ensure coherent development across the site and will give a clear expectation to developers as to what is required with reserved matters applications. I've included the following a number of extracts which follow to show what is contained within it. So this is an extract from section 1, the guiding principles, which include the green and blue infrastructure, ecology and biodiversity, legibility and sense of place, accessibility and urban form, and sustainability. Extract from section 3, movement, shows how developers would be expected to lay out plans in terms of street layouts. A mixture of text and diagrams are key to the design code in getting the key aspects of it across to developers. Extract from section 4, which is built form. So the site has been divided into 3 character areas. The pink area being classed as the village centre, closest to the existing edge of Eggborough. The blue area being the site central, and the green area being the rural edge. And going through the design code, each character area has specific and different aspects to it, which will be expected to come forward in reserve matters. This is from section 4, built form, which is the rural edge character area. And you can see by a use of description and image how information is being conveyed to the developer in order to show what is being expected. And again, this is for public open space. So that's just to give you an idea of what the design code includes. It's quite a large document. So turning to photographs, this is a Google image showing the site from the junction of Whelan Road and Kellington Lane. And then if we go closer to the site, this is westwards, looking westwards towards Kellington Windmill. And then looking southwest across the site. This is Whelan Road heading away from the village, heading west. And as you can see, this is where national speed limit signs are currently in place. And then this is the looking in the opposite direction where we have the junction with Broach Lane, where we have the main site access, which will be going to the site. So the speed limit signs will be extended to closer to where where the Google image is being taken from to this street sign. So it's the western side of the roundabout. And then this is the roundabout location looking towards the site. And then Whelan Road looking towards the village. The actual junction itself, there's at the moment, Whelan Road and Broach Lane. And then this is the northwest corner of the site. There are existing pylons which go over the site. This part of the development is going to be open space, obviously because of the constraints with the pylons. The site from the northwest corner. Kellington Lane looking north. And then the site from Kellington Lane, there is a ditch on the site side of Kellington Lane. Again, another view of the site. And then a Google image showing Kellington Lane, and you can see the proximity of dwellings on the opposite side. And the arrow indicates the location of the secondary access to the site. And then looking southwards from down Kellington Lane, you can see the site on the right-hand side. And then this is the southern edge of southern end of Kellington Lane. There's a recreation ground on the right of the photo, and the site lies to, on the left of the photo, the site lies to the right. This is the junction with Kellington Lane and Station Row. Station Row is to the side of this white building and extends into the site, and to the south of there lies the station. That's the end of my presentation, Chair. The recommendation to committee is to grant outline planning permission, subject to conditions and the completion of a Section 106 agreement, which will secure contributions towards highway improvements, towpath and rail improvements, education, healthcare, and will also secure biodiversity, local centre uses and open space. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Any updates? No updates. Missed it.
Would you like me to update again?
No, we're fine. Everybody happy? Right. Our first objector is Karen Woodstone on Teams. Can you hear us, Karen? Oh, you're on mute, please.
I can, thank you.
You have 5 minutes. You may start whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Chair and members, thank you for your time. I'm not here to argue that North Yorkshire does not need housing. I'm asking whether this particular 1,430 home scheme is sufficiently evidence for approval today. In May, officers recommended approval. You were not satisfied. This committee unanimously deferred and specifically asked for an independent assessment of affordable housing, alongside the further work on housing mix, SIL funding, Section 106 and rail. Today, officers recommend approval again, but paragraph 4.4 of your own report says that no view viability information has been provided to allow an independent review to be undertaken, and that is the key point. You asked for independent testing and it hasn't happened. So what has changed from May that makes the evidence you unanimously considered necessary no longer necessary today? The applicant relies on Manor Farm at Hambleton to support 10% affordable housing, but Manor Farm was 156 homes, not 1,430, and site-specific viability evidence there was independently examined. The council's own viability evidence also shows how sensitive these figures are, identifying 20% on greenfield development at Thorpe Willoughby, but 10% here. This is why I think scrutiny matters. You asked for that scrutiny and the information needed was not provided. There is a wider problem running through this recommendation. Uncertainty repeatedly becomes certainty by the final planning balance. Your landscape officer identifies significant adverse effect on landscape character. The report accepts permanent loss of 50 hectares of grade 3 best and most versatile agricultural land. The conservation officer says true heritage impact cannot yet be fully assessed at outline stage. Yet these issues are ultimately treated as acceptable or neutral. Mitigation reduces the harm, it doesn't make it disappear. The same caution is needed on highways. National Highways originally objected because of the impact on M62 Junction 34. The current report accepts the development will affect the junction and describes mitigation as agreed in principle, following a stage 1 road safety audit. Yet the final balance records no residual transport effects. Members should be satisfied that the evidence demonstrates the cumulative traffic impact and effectiveness of that mitigation, rather than simply assuming the issue was resolved. Benefits need separating from mitigation. Education contributions are required because 1,430 homes create additional demand. Station works may be secured, but paragraph 4.26 confirms the development does not rely on enhanced rail frequencies. Extra trains are not resolved. Necessary mitigation and future aspirations should not be given the same weight as genuine additional public benefit. This site also conflicts with the adopted development plan. The housing shortfall engages paragraph 11D, but the tilted balance is not an automatic permission. You still have to weigh the real harms against properly evidenced and secured benefits. So I bring you back to May. You decided you needed more evidence before approving this scheme. On the most important issue you identified, affordable housing, your own report confirms that evidence has not yet been provided. If you are not satisfied that the adverse impacts are significantly and demonstrably outweighed by properly evidenced and secured benefits, refuse. At the absolute minimum, I request please don't approve 1,430 homes today until the independent assessment you yourselves required has actually been completed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Moving on, our next speaker is Councillor Susan Jackson. Could you join us at the table, please? You have 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Report of the Head of Development Management, 2.3, I quote, the significant contribution the proposal makes to market and affordable housing, great weight is given to this consideration. This is a hypocritical statement as banks will still propose 10% affordable housing. It needs to be 40%. Don't be frightened by possible appeals on this, i.e. Hambleton. Eggborough is a lower property value area and therefore is more accessible for first-time buyers, which will help our younger generation in the area. The Aspinall Verde Viability Assessment 2022 is out of date, and therefore this is irrelevant and should not be used. Andy Burnham has stated there needs to be more affordable housing, so don't be afraid of banks lodging an appeal on this basis. 2.5, I quote, and the loss of best and most versatile agricultural land. It is extremely naive and downright irresponsible to state that North Yorkshire Council has a housing target, and this will override the loss of 50 hectares of 3A and 26 hectares of 3B irrigated crop growing land. The country has to be food efficient, not food inefficient. Indeed, ITV News 7 AM today reported nearly 75% of England in drought conditions and to expect food shortages in supermarkets. The Selby local plan was dropped. Has North Yorkshire formulated a 5-year plan for the supply of housing land, or are they happy to pass anything regardless of what impact it has on the locality of the development? 4.2, I quote, Case for Change report is expected to conclude in autumn 2026. Why are we here now without this full report? Planning portal entry 41023, volume 3, chapter 4, appendix 4.4, link and junction impact assessment, proportionate link impacts. Reference 4 shows the A645 Wheeland Road, east of Kennington Lane, a morning peak hour, a percentage impact of 214.8%. Yes, 214.8% increase in traffic. Let's turn to the projected impact on the M62 junction. The morning peak hour, 134.4% increase. Evening peak hour, 120.7% increase. These figures are further confirmed by Appendix 8.3 Assessment and Model Impact. Where is the full report specifically in relation to the M62 Junction 34? The figures are on the planning portal. I have raised this several times and I'm very disturbed to say that I am being ignored on this. Heights of the proposed buildings to the north of Kennington Lane, i.e. 2.5 to 3.5 storey, opposite single-storey bungalows. These heights should be in the middle of the proposed development. Humber and North Yorkshire Health and Care Partnership report dated 7/12/23, an additional 3,600 residents. The development would be unsustainable and disproportionate, given our present population of approximately 2,500. Policy SP12 identifies healthcare as an infrastructure requirement from new developments, and yet there is no medical centre planned, just funding for improvements to Ashgrove Surgery, whose premises already lack space. So let's make a comparison here. Anybody that's familiar with Stainer Hall, Selby, 1,200 homes connected to good existing infrastructure, jobs, public transport, and the road network. This proposed development, 1,500 houses, very poor existing infrastructure, very few jobs, sparse public transport, and poor road networks. It should be recorded that banks have kindly made a donation of £2,000 to Hensall Cricket Club, and 3 of their members are the stars of a promotional video for their site.
Just sum up, please.
Also a donation of £2,000 to Eggborough Power Cricket Club, And you should recall that Lee Dowson from that club spoke at the last planning meeting in support of banks. It's also just been stated that the latest round of objections from residents forms are en masse. Therefore, I would like to point out that the majority of support forms are a mass-produced document.
I need you to stop there, please. Your
Thank
5
you.
minutes is up.
I would call for it to be refused.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Councillor Mary McCartney.
Councillors, my name is Mary McCartney and I will be speaking on behalf of Kellington Parish Council. I'll try to keep it brief. The Banks Group proposal is the dumbest application I've come across to dump 1,500 houses next to the sustainable community of Eggborough is just daft. Eggborough has grown massively over the last 30 years and currently there are about 700 new properties being built or in the planning system. For most of the developments, there was very little in the way of objections by residents. They are not NIMBYs, but enough is enough, and Eggborough has had enough. I know that the Labour government want to see more homes being built, and so do I, and so do most of the local residents. But these new homes need to be built close to where people work. How many people who buy one of Banks' houses will be working locally? And how many will be commuting to Hull, Leeds, Doncaster, Wakefield and other areas? This is not environmentally friendly. Up to 3,000 cars travelling on the M62 going over the railway crossing every day. About 20 years ago, there was a proposal to build an eco-town in Eggborough and neighbouring villages. It was going to be called Willow Green. The project was finally scrapped as common sense clicked in and they realised there is nothing green or environmentally friendly about 1,000 residents commuting or to work over the railway line. I had hoped that Banks would have shown some decency or morality and upped the affordable housing to 20% at least, but it seems that it is all about profit. Councillors, if you do decide to pass this, and I desperately hope you don't, please ensure that they at least have to give 40% affordable housing. They can afford it. They're going to make millions. But please, please kick Banks into touch and refuse this ridiculous application. Thank you.
Thank you. Final speaker is the applicant, James Seabury. You have 5 minutes, sir, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, councillors. You might have spotted it's not James. My name's Rob Ormrod. I'm Director at Banks Property Homes, head up our Yorkshire office. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak today in support of our planning application for infrastructure-led development at Eggborough that will deliver 1,300 energy efficient homes, including a minimum of 143 affordable homes and a 70-bed extra care facility. A new primary school and nursery alongside a new local centre. Upgrades to Whitley Bridge train station. Upgrades to Whitley Bridge train station and new bus services. Over £20 million in developer contributions. Over 32 acres, the equivalent of up to 24 football pitches, of new community parks, children's play areas, allotments, and a new running loop. And over 10% biodiversity net gain in the form of new woodlands and grassland habitats. Following the deferral in May, we have carefully considered the discussion by members and reasons for deferral. The former Selby District Council only delivered 147 affordable homes over 3 years up to 2023 across the whole district. If approved, this proposal will deliver a minimum of 147 affordable homes as part of a single planning application. The level of affordable housing proposed is policy compliant and supported by the council's most recent viability evidence. There have been numerous recent appeal decisions where 10% affordable housing in the Southern Selby area has been accepted by planning officers as compliant. The most recent appeal decision, which has been previously mentioned, was in January 2025, Manor Farm, Hambleton, only 6 miles from Eggborough, where the inspector concluded that 10% affordable housing was policy compliant and there was no basis for the local authority to request a higher percentage. The housing mix and building heights included with the proposals are indicative. The final housing mix is secured by planning condition and will be subject to review and approval by North Yorkshire Council through subsequent reserve matters applications. We have agreed with officers a total of over £20.3 million to support and deliver new infrastructure in the local area. The Council's recently published infrastructure business plan states that SIL monies will be provided towards secondary education within the Selby area. The approach to education provision is consistent with the Council's infrastructure business plan. The proposed development does not rely upon enhanced rail frequencies to make it acceptable in terms of planning. However, we believe new homes supported by improved rail infrastructure is the right approach to development. Network Rail and the Combined Authority support the measures that we have secured as part of our planning application. Regarding highways, the key consultees, National Highways, the County Highways team are all supportive of our proposals. A package of active travel measures will also improve pedestrian and cycle access to both Whitley Bridge train station and areas of local employment. The landowners, the Poskett family, are a family-owned farming business. They manage a large area of farmland, which is essential to them to engage competitively with retailers and wholesale food processors. The development represents less than 3% of the total land they farm. Any proceeds will be reinvested into the business, ensuring continued local employment and sustainable growth for future generations. Alongside the Poskett family, we have worked on this proposal for over 6 years and have engaged at length with North Yorkshire Council, all relevant consultees and the local community. As a business, we have a long-term commitment to development with care. Through this approach, we have awarded over £22,000 to a variety of local community groups in Eggborough and the surrounding villages. We believe this is the right approach to support local communities in which we operate. We are proud of this approach and will continue to make a positive contribution to the local community in the future. In summary, this proposal will deliver an infrastructure-led mixed-use development which is in line with both local and national policy. The site has previously been identified as a draft mixed-use allocation in the recently ceased Selby Emerging Plan. There are no ecological, environmental or technical objections to the proposals from any of the relevant technical consultees and the Council's planning officers. We truly believe that this is a transformational scheme for Eggborough, delivering much needed new homes and infrastructure. In accordance with your officer's recommendation,
could you sum up, please? We
would therefore respectfully request that the proposals are endorsed and that a full planning permission be granted. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I will close. Right, thank you very much. Members, we come to questions to the officer, and can we stick to questions and no statements? I've got Councillor Packham first.
I can make these very quick yes/no answers, I think, Chair. Right, my first question is, at the last meeting, we deferred this application with a series of issues we wanted to be looked at. Can I just be clear that doesn't actually preclude us from making any decision at this application of any sort? In other words, it doesn't tie us to any particular decision. We could refuse, allow, or defer this application here.
Who would like to answer that one? Martin.
It doesn't tie. You can make no decisions being made, so you can make the decision you see fit today on this application.
Thank you.
My next question is, we know that the housing shortfall engages the tilted balance, but is not an automatic green light, and we still have to consider adverse impacts That's correct, isn't it? And the if we consider the adverse impacts outweigh the benefits, then we need to make a decision on that basis.
Martin?
That is correct. You must do that in full knowledge of the 5-year land supply position, but your point is completely correct, yeah.
Third one, what weight do we have to give to the draft local plan allocation, the local plan that was discontinued?
Can you move the microphone just a little bit closer, please, Martin?
In terms of the previous draft local plan, the draft local plan wasn't continued. So the evidence that was produced for that plan could be material consideration, but the plan has no status as a development plan.
The next one relates to education contributions, and the applicant's position is that secondary education impact should be dealt with by way of CIL, Community Infrastructure Levy payments. Do officers agree with that, given that this is likely to generate somewhere in the region of 170 secondary school pupils? Should they not be considered as a direct impact of the development?
Linda?
Yep, thank you. Yeah, we've gone back to the relevant officers and confirmed with them that that's the approach that they are happy with and they agree with that.
I wasn't aware it was their right to agree with anything when it came to CIL, but we'll come to that later.
Thank you. Councillor McCartney. And it's questions to officers, please.
I know questions. I can read. I've got quite a lot of questions, actually. Firstly, just...
Use your microphone, please.
Yeah, okay. Why have we not had the independent assessment of the affordable? What we asked for that, and why aren't we getting it? The affordable housing, that's what we...
Martin?
We checked completely with the policy team. We checked that it was policy compliant. On that basis, it was considered unnecessary.
Thought it was meant to be independent. Sorry, no, sorry. I thought Andy had moved that we wanted an independent look at it. Sorry, is this working? Do I need to get deeper? Okay, I'm here now, yes. Right, okay. So Andy moved at the last meeting that we needed to get independent. Didn't you, Andy? So why haven't we done that?
I think I've answered that question. We considered it was we liaised with policy colleagues in relation to the evidence base. We looked at the position on that evidence base and it was considered unnecessary. So therefore, we've returned the report without the independent assessment. I think whether or not that was correct to do so is a matter for debate, but that is our technical position as officers.
I thought the planning committee here were in charge of this, maybe, or even, we asked for it. Surely you could have got back to us and explained this before the meeting.
Can we stick with questions?
Well, I will.
Until you get to the debate. Save that one for debate.
Well, I've got a lot of other important things.
Oh.
Right. So my next question, would it be possible to put up the diagram showing the M62 junction so that we can be shown, and everybody on the committee, especially those who weren't able to attend the site visit yesterday, to see what National Highways are proposing for that junction?
Is there a question?
Once I've got it up, yeah. So my question is, can you then explain what they are actually doing to improve this junction? I did email you it last night, Linda.
Your question, John.
What can you point out the wonderful upgrade to this roundabout that National Highways are putting in?
It's been agreed with National Highways and the applicant that there'll be additional there'll be signalisation of the eastern exit. So that's the one coming from the Leeds direction, and then vegetation clearance and road widening to the north.
So basically, they're cutting some grass, which we have to complain about most years, and they're going to concrete that, and then they're painting some words on the floors on the roads, and that's it, isn't it?
It's been agreed with National Highways, and they are satisfied with what's been agreed.
They've been got at. Yeah.
Next question.
Yeah, just this is a question, right? Where do you think the up to 3,000 residents of this new estate will actually work?
It's not a planning consideration.
Still an interesting question.
Yeah, but the officers can't possibly answer that one.
Yeah, well, that's what I thought the answer would be, actually. You do mention in the report about Network Rail and the railway station obviously at Whitley Bridge, which is on the Goole to Nottingley line. Have you actually spoken to Network Rail? I couldn't find this in your report, although there's a lot of talk about railway, about whether there is any capacity at Leeds station, which is going to be the main one if people are going to work, any capacity for any more trains on to get workers to Leeds. Have you spoken to them about that?
That's not a conversation I've had. The negotiations have been primarily between the applicant and Network Rail, and Network Rail have not raised an objection to the proposal. We cannot require changes to Leeds Station to support this application.
I just can't see the point in upgrading the station if there's not going to be any more trains, but there you go. And there clearly aren't going to be. So much for, yeah. At 7.3, you state, and this is a quote, in favour of the scheme, the applicant present that the proposal is a sustainable location. What do they mean by sustainable?
Can I just clarify, please, what reports are you referring to? The original report?
7.3. No, this
is that the original report from May, or is that the addendum?
The new one. It's the big dangle.
Do you have a page number, Councillor McCartney?
You mean she didn't know it by heart? 7 point, yeah.
Apologies, Councillor. Could you say your question again?
7.3. You got it?
We have 7.3, yes.
Yeah, okay. And it states in there, in favour of the scheme, the applicant presents that the proposal is a sustainable, it's a sustainable location. And I just wondered if you know, or you have a view on what that sustainable, what that means. I just don't understand what it means.
Eggborough is a designated service village already identified in the local plan. The local plan identifies it as one of the more sustainable settlements in the area. I expect it's referring to that.
And it also continues then about the benefits cited of affordable housing. So 10% of 1,500. Do you really, or anybody in this room, think that 10% is a benefit?
As already previously explained, 10% is policy compliant, and it's beneficial to actually have affordable housing.
I mean, the only real benefit here is to banks when they can sell 90% of their housing, make a fortune.
John,
At 7.7, no, sorry, I've only got one more left, I think. I'll leave it there actually and then come back.
you'll get another chance if you
Yeah.
come up with something later on. Councillor Timothy.
In item 4.12 of the new report, there's a reference to the housing mix being effectively controlled through reserve matters, and we've heard that already. Is the intention, if this is approved, that the reserve matters comes back to this committee for decision?
Martin.
Happy to put the reserve matters back to this committee.
Thank you, Chair. Just 3 questions. The public realm and the vegetation on it, will that be maintained by us, or will the developer contribute towards its maintenance in cost? Has there any discussion taken place on that yet?
Thank you. A management company is normally set up and they undertake the maintenance of the vegetation.
So it's not a factor in our funding in any way. Thank you. On the presentation we saw earlier, I appreciate it's indicative, but the tree height was always at gutter level. Is that a policy decision that's been made? Because the last thing you want, having sustainable housing with solar panels, is trees that block out the sunlight. Has any decision been made about that to maintain the species height level to gutter level?
No decision's been made.
Could you look into that and make sure that gutter height level is a consideration in tree planting? The developer mentioned in his talk that there would be 147 affordable homes. Affordable homes are invariably very unaffordable to most people. Will any of them be rental homes, or will they all be on the basis of sale and a reduced amount?
There'll be a mix of tenure, which would be agreed with the affordable housing team, and that will be set out in any section 106 and obviously taken forward in each reserve matter stage.
Thank you. Councillor Morehouse.
That's it. Thank you. Yeah, I'd like some clarification, please. Firstly, I'd like to say welcome the extra care housing for which has been included, which I think is really essential. I mean, it's something we really need across the county. But what concerns me really, and what in the first presentation we heard that we referred to the medical facility, medical centre, but it isn't. It's affordable housing, which is on site. I'd just like clarification that I think I could see from the S106 money that there's about 1.7 million, which is possibly going to be given towards supporting the existing doctor surgeries in the village. Now, it just it concerns me. I mean, are they enforced to do this? Do the GPs want to do it? I mean, I would like to have seen possibly, but it's probably late stage. I've just come into this, but it to be more provision on site. I mean, there's a cry out for dentistry and things like that. What sort of confirmation we got that this 1.7 million will be actually taken by the providers? I don't know anything about the local practitioners and if they can extend where they are to facilitate the new patients. That's one thing. The affordable housing, which we touched on, there is a breakdown there. I was pleased to see. But you've said that's a minimum of 10%. I'm just a little bit why you couldn't come back today and tell us exactly what you're going to give us rather than saying that's the worst you're going to get. I would have liked to see a little bit more clarification on that and when that decision will become under reserve matters. Thank you. But I do think 10% is quite small. Thank you.
Linda.
Thank you. With regards the healthcare contribution, that contribution is a result of our consultation with the NHS. So they've derived that figure and identified where it should go, and it would be secured via Section 106 agreement. So it would go exactly where it's intended. And then with regards to the affordable housing, apologies, I've forgotten what the question was. Could you repeat it, please?
It was just the developer said a minimum of 10%. I was quite disappointed, having been raised at the previous meeting, that they couldn't come back and say exactly what. I mean, that's the backstop. And will that be taken back to reserve matters? Thank you.
Thank you. On the 10% issue, the 10% is policy compliant, but we've got quite a number of developers who will do deals with housing associations, which could increase that number. But that's a deal that they would do rather than something which we would impose on them by virtue of the legal agreement or conditions. So that's why it says a minimum of from what the developer would be providing. Does that make sense? I've just come back on the integrated care board point and health. So we're not health experts. So that's why we go to the ICB, who know from their discussions with the practices, etc., where the best use of that money is. In certain locations, they'll say we need to invest in a new facility somewhere. Here, they've said that it should be going into the existing. So that's their view, which is why we go to them, because we wouldn't be able to give you that guidance ourselves as planning officers.
Thank you. Well, as a member of the Scrutiny of Health for a long time and the Care and Independence, this is why I raise it. But thank you. The ICB have been, and I understand that, just let the money in the right place. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Yes, in the circumstance where we've not received any extra viability information despite asking for it, are we now dependent on a generalistic survey in 2022 of the cheapest parts of Selby property prices? Is that what we now depend on?
Martin?
I think what we're saying is a study was done by Aspel & Verdi, which has been confirmed as our evidence base on this matter, which sets our policy position. So we're, in a sense, we're dependent on the information that's in it. That is our position. That's a position that has been, upheld by inspectors at appeal. But I think we've answered that question already. So
I understand that to say we are dependent on a 2020 survey of the general prices in the Selby area of the cheapest properties. What sales value did that estimate create for this specific project? What's the expected revenue using that methodology?
I don't think they can provide that information at the moment.
Don't have that information to hand at the moment.
Okay, so we don't know what that system is, and we don't have that information available to us. On Rightmove, the average price in the Eggborough area, do we know that?
These are very specific questions in relation to that evidence base. What the officer has done is she's consulted the colleagues in policy, they're responsible for that evidence base, and she's checked that what's proposed here is compliant with it. They've come back and confirmed that it is compliant with that evidence base and the detail within it. So rather than us needing to analyse that in detail from a blow-by-blow technical point of view, it is compliant with that evidence. That's the basis of the officer recommendation.
So my information that £256,312 is the average price in Eggborough on Rightmove, generating 384 million in revenue, has not been checked out. There's been no attempt to find out specific prices of houses selling currently in Eggborough. That would be what you're saying to me.
I think I've answered that question already.
So on the site visit yesterday, I found information to suggest that a new development yards from here, 5-bedroom houses were selling for 516,000, 4-bedroom houses were selling for 330,000, and 3-bedroom houses were selling for 290,000. Is there any reason to believe that the buildings put up by this developer would be of a lower quality and would sell for lower prices?
I think we've made our position clear. We've used the established evidence base to look at the application. If the application is policy compliant with the evidence base, that evidence base is.
A little bit closer.
Sorry.
That's it.
Right. I was just repeating what I'd said previously. So my apology, it sounded like a stuck record. I understand the points that have been made by Councillor Bann. We're aligned on the evidence base. That is our policy position for the council. The issue of whether that evidence base is correct, I think, is a matter for the debate. Whether members accept the evidence base is a matter for debate. But as officers, we've got to recommend that we work with that policy position. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Brown.
I will leave my following points for debate.
Just in terms of your figures, they're probably actually quite consistent with what has happened in the market over the last 4 or 5 years, and the build costs and the development costs have gone up by about 75,000. So if you take the evidence-based figures and add them through, they're about where they should be. So from a perspective where I look at these things, not week in, week out, but on a fair old basis, it follows the trajectory of where the market has travelled. So that's why I'm not actually nervous with that evidence base. It follows through. Build costs have gone up. The market hasn't gone up in the same way, but it is in line with, I think, the figures you just outlined.
So I do need to come back. So then you're telling us as officer advice that the 476 million that would be generated if the prices were the same as a neighbouring site is in line with that 2022 survey, and those figures are consistent. That's a very important answer to give me. I'll be very careful about how you answer it.
I'm not saying that because I haven't had to analyse it, because our policy colleagues, as Martin says, has actually said that it complies with the policy and the evidence base that we're using. What I'm giving you is a personal reflection of how I read stuff in the building world press in terms of how costs have gone up, etc. So it's a personal view I'm giving you rather than a kind of a policy one. But I think Martin has answered the question in terms of how we have to look at it from a policy perspective.
Thank you. Councillor Peacock.
Yes, yesterday, this is sort of double-edged sort of question because it's referring to the primary school. I mean, we know you're talking the funny going forward to be building a primary school, but we did also actually see yesterday the other primary school, and I think you said it was nursery or something like that adjacent to it. So there's funding in there which could be used on that site. From what is said here, I'm presuming that. But what my question was that there's the tunnel that we saw. You know, I was very interested in the walking to it. And I'm just wondering, from the site that we're referring to, have we got, because you talk about footpaths, right away, public rights of way in it, have we actually got a right of way or safety for them to, if they continue to walk to the original primary school site, which by the funding that's going in could be used for early learning, even special educational needs, or goodness knows what in the future. We are talking 10 years, goodness knows how many years down the line.
Linda?
Yeah, so land is being gifted as part of the proposal for a school, which when built out, would be more central to the village and would save children and parents having to do that walk, which isn't the best. The existing routes would remain the same. Depending on how the site is built out, people would access the route via Kellington Lane and going south. But eventually there will be a connection of footpaths and links through the site, which will allow more connectivity to it. But eventually the idea is that the actual school for the village moves to more central to the village, which it would be in the site that's being proposed.
Councillor Peacock.
Well, I'm coming back on that because if you take a primary school away from the primary school site, that will be a community building which could be used later. So they would still need access to it. So I think that's what I was based on. You close the school property there, you put it into this new site, primary school, you're going to have the building. And I'm just questioning as to whether there's any funding been going in to make a safe route to that building, which is very much part of Eggersborough.
As far as I'm aware, the existing school is being retained, so there'll just be additional capacity provided with the new school that's being proposed on site.
So it comes back to the same thing I was asking. Have we got anything said within this application for any safety provision to that building, just like you've been saying about safety to the roundabout? Have we anything in about that route to that building?
I think I've already answered, but we have consulted education on this proposal. Nothing has been raised that any routes need to be improved.
Thank you. I've just one more question. It was actually on that same page 23. I had maybe not picked it up as much because I had been looking last night after seeing everything. It was on the 7.2. Why is it said that biodiversity net gain is not mandatory on this application when usually it is? It's 10%, I think, on most applications.
The application was submitted before mandatory BNG came into force, so we can't insist on it.
Thank you.
Right. Any more, Councillor Peacock? I'll get to you, Derek. Councillor Goslow, please.
Thank you. In terms of housing mixes and specifically heights, we've heard the concern regarding the potential conflict between the high new building heights and the lower existing homes. Can you clarify where the highest buildings or the higher building heights will be and that they won't conflict with those lower height properties on Kellington Lane, and whether this is something for this committee or for Reserve Matters Committee?
Thank you. Yes, in short, it would be a matter for Reserve Matters coming back. So the indicative parameters plan does show that building heights which are expected and higher building heights are shown around the local centre, school and extra care facility, which is sited towards Kellington Lane. And clearly when any Reserve Matters comes in, close consideration will be given to the heights and the relationship between the buildings.
Yeah, supplementary.
Is there something we can say now to offer our feelings that there shouldn't be a conflict between the lower building heights on Kellington Lane? Because if it comes to Reserve Matters, the work's essentially been done if there is conflict. But is there something we can put within this application stage to say that we don't wish to see a conflict?
It's like with any application of this nature, you've got the opportunity to comment on that and judge it when we see a scheme in front of us. There isn't a necessity to condition it at this stage. We wouldn't really know what we're conditioning because you could put a height on which, depending on how far back you are, the distance between the properties would then impact on that relationship. So at the end of the day, that's why we can see it at Reserve Matters, make a judgment then. If we don't like it, you refuse it.
As I said before as well, when the reserve matters comes in, I'd be happy to refer the reserve matters application back to strategic committee, so you could apply that judgment at that point in time.
Councillor Goslar?
Would that issue carry enough weight to refuse it at a reserve matters committee?
The only be able to refuse the reserve matters. You couldn't refuse outline planning permission if it was granted.
Reserve matters.
At the reserve matters stage, you could look at those issues that have been reserved, which could include aspects of design. That could be a basis for refusing an application if you didn't agree with it.
Thank you, Chair. And I fully support Councillor Goslar in that, because I spoke at the last meeting regarding the height of the buildings opposite the single storey. So I would look forward to that coming back, Hannah, as well. It's just on the social housing. Well, I'm heartened to hear we have the backstop of 10%. I must admit I am bitterly disappointed. However, we've heard from the officer, it's up to the developer to negotiate with maybe a partner social landlord. Can we draw any comfort in knowing that if any discussion had taken place?
Not sure the officers can answer that one. Anybody want to attempt?
I don't know the specifics of this case, but I do know that we are getting increasing conversations with developers when they're looking at larger schemes, larger property development, that they are doing those deals because it is the social landlords that have got more money and more funding opportunities. So say for this case, I don't know, but across the board, we've got far more interest now than we had 3 or 4 years ago.
Councillor Basterman.
Thank you, Chair. The answer is as I expected, if I'm quite honest. But I would hope that there is a discussion between the developer and any RSL that they may be in partnership with. And just it's on the record for anyone present, I didn't attend a site visit yesterday, as Councillor Swires didn't, because we were attending a pre-arranged licensing meeting in Scarborough. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Sharma.
Sorry to come back again, but it's just something that's been mentioned. If there are social housing going to come on with other suppliers, will all houses meet minimum space standards? Because there is a tendency we found in Scarborough that deals are done which remove the minimum space standards so long as somebody's prepared to accept it, and deals get done behind the scene and there's nothing we can do. Can we make sure that minimum space standards throughout the site are maintained?
Thank you. Yes, certainly with regards to that, yes, we are looking at space standards, and we will ensure that in terms with affordable housing, the affordable housing team do pick up developers where they put forward substandard sizes. So yes, it will be taken forward.
Including social housing. Thank you.
Right, I think we've exhausted that. We move to debate if everybody's happy. Councillor Packham.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm sorry, I might take a little while on this because I'm looking at this application and it's the largest application for housing in the Old Selby district that we've looked at since North Yorkshire was formed. Just to get some sort of context in the size, it constitutes 1,500 houses. That is, in relative terms, the same number of houses that have been built in Sherburn since 2005. And Sherburn in 2005 was already 3 times bigger than Eggborough is now. So that's the scale that we're looking at. It's obviously clear that the lack of a 5-year supply tilts the balance in favour of development. I think we all accept that. But we do need to consider whether the adverse impacts actually outweigh the benefits. I think to start on those, we look first at the things that we asked for deferral on and see what's actually been progressed on that. So looking at affordable housing, I thought Councillor Jackson's comments on that were very, very helpful. As she points out, a lot of this is out of date. The study referred to dates from 2022, the appeals at Hambleton from 2024. As Mr. Turpin said, in the last 4 or 5 years, there's been big changes in the housing market. But we're told that the study from 2022 is effectively now policy. I'm not sure how that comes about because we don't look at the local plan itself, but apparently we can take that as policy. And the other issue on that, of course, is that we're always told that we need to consider each application on its merits, but apparently that doesn't seem to apply to affordable housing when you haven't got a policy, because I don't think we have. The applicants are saying that the substantial infrastructure burden for this development, that there is a substantial infrastructure burden. That isn't really surprising, is it? Because it's a strategic proposal and it then generates a need for strategic infrastructure improvements. And I would have thought that that would have been fairly apparent at day one and would have been reflected in the land price. But I have to confess I'm not an expert on that issue. Members asked for an independent review of affordable housing because of the site size. And we wanted to ensure that we had the correct affordable housing provision, but that's not been carried out. So it looks like we're ending up with this 10% policy compliant affordable housing. I turn now to the other issue another issue we raised, which was the community infrastructure levy and CIL. At paragraph 418, it states the applicant's position is that secondary school infrastructure is to be delivered through CIL in accordance with the council's infrastructure delivery plan to be fully consistent with regulations. And officers say at para 420, site-specific mitigation is served through section 106, secured through section 106, strategic infrastructure is funded through CIL receipts. I agree with that because I think that's how we should be doing it. But to my view, infrastructure needs at Selby does not preclude the need for a 106 contribution to meet the specific impacts of this development. And that's because of the increase in pupil roles as a direct result of the development. That's not strategic. That's related to this development. Interestingly, at a recent CIL workshop, members were informed that 106 payments are not a gift from the developer. They are not to mitigate direct impacts. With regard to CIL, officers explained that CIL is a fixed, non-negotiable charge on new floor space, and it is pooled to fund strategic infrastructure needs. The North Yorkshire Council Infrastructure Statement for 2024-25 sets down the key characteristics of CIL, and these are: no direct link is required between the developer and the infrastructure founded by the CIL. Spending priorities are not defined at the point of collection, and calculation is based on a standardised administrative process, not negotiation. In other words, it's not for the developer to tell the North Yorkshire Council what CIL will be spent on. Indeed, it's basically none of their business. What they need to do is pay 106 contributions to meet the impacts of their development. So I wholly reject the contention that there should be no 106 contribution for secondary education, which by my calculation will generate somewhere between 170 and 200 secondary school pupils that will need to attend our schools, and there will be a cost involved. I'll leave others to discuss the railway issue, only saying that I disagree with the officer's statement that the proposed application does not rely on rail service frequency improvements to make it acceptable in planning terms. I can see little else that would convince me that this proposal is sustainable. Which brings me to my final point. The development by my calculations will result in a 140% increase in the population of Eggborough. Although some of the houses are actually in Kellington Parish, as we've heard. Population census 2021, 2438, the population of Eggborough. This would increase it in the region of 3,500, so bringing it to about 6,000. I accept that core strategy policies are out of date, clearly, because we haven't got a 5-year supply. But policy SP2, which is referred to, sought to deliver sustainable development across the former district, and Eggborough was a designated service village with scope for additional growth. But let's not pretend if we had a 5-year supply, we would ever consider this was an appropriate scale of development if assessed under the previous local plan, because we wouldn't. Core strategy para 527 actually stated there is scope for smaller scale growth in a number of larger, more sustainable villages. I suspect that Eggborough would fall into that category quite nicely. Why? Because that fitted the strategy of proposing levels of development in settlements roughly in proportion to their size. It's a common strategy in planning. We've seen it across all our local plans in various places, and it makes sense. So in terms of paragraph 11D, I see the issue of affordable housing contributions for secondary education, the need to contributions to secondary education, the need to secure an increase in rail services and the sheer scale of the development as being the issues that need to be considered in the balance when determining this application. And potentially some weight should also be given to the loss of agricultural land and medical facilities. I put these issues forward for discussion, as before reaching a conclusion, I'd like to hear the views of other councillors. I would like to ask fellow members to resist making a recommendation before we have heard from others their views. I apologise for the length of that statement, and I apologise for the fact that most of it was written, but this is a really complicated issue and we've got to get it right. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the 100+ people who wrote to me raising issues, and also thank the developer for their glossy presentation of their case. Read both of them carefully. There are positives, there are negatives here. Locals are right, I think, to be concerned about the loss of agricultural low-grade land, grade 1 land, and also I can understand their concerns about the scale of the development. And I think a lot of people who wrote to me clearly expected their local representative to just be able to speak up and voice their concerns, and that would be it. Unfortunately, we're tied by planning law, and we have to assess the planning law gains and losses. And there are some significance on both sides. And for me, the big issue here is that one enormous question remains, which is this good use of the land? Even in a situation where we haven't hit the planning targets and are facing horribly high targets imposed by the government, even in that situation, we are required to satisfy ourselves that this is the best use of a very big project. I am not yet satisfied of that. And I asked at the last meeting that we be given an independent, up-to-date assessment of the viability of the site so that we could be clear that 10% was the correct figure. And please, let's not have any illusions that 10% is a minimum. 10% is the only thing we can insist on. Anything beyond that is commercial decision. 10% is the thing we can put on. And in the absence of receiving an up-to-date independent assessment, we are being told that we have to rely on a 2022 assessment that was part of the local plan evidence base. Well, as Councillor Packham has pointed out, we've been told the local plan doesn't count. Yet we're being asked to rely entirely on a 4-year-old survey conducted as part of that, when we have very easy access to up-to-date information from people who neighbour this site, who are selling properties of very similar standards. And I quote again the prices: 516,000 for a 5-bedroom house. There are 150 of them. there were 330,000 for a 4-bedroom house. There were 450 of those. 290,000 for a 600 for a 3-bed house. There are 600 of those. Making a rough estimate of what 2-bedroom and 1-bedroom might go for of 200 and 150,000, I ended up with 476 million as being what's generated from this site. Rightmove also was an easy thing to research, and their figures demonstrated that in recent sale prices, 256,000 had been. We are dealing with a commuter belt application next to a station, and we are being asked to use the valuations of the lowest value property in Selby. I want to say directly to any planning inspector who listens to this, are you satisfied that is good use of this? Are you satisfied that that's going to give us the maximum number of affordable houses that this community is expected to, is entitled to expect? You know, you need proper, up-to-date, independent figures, not out-of-date generalistic ones about low-value areas. So yeah, I cannot be confident that we have secured the correct valuation, and I cannot be confident that we are making the best use of this land. And that leaves me only 2 options. One would be a straight rejection, which I think would be inappropriate, because I think that there are some merits to this site. You know, we have got to provide housing. And I know that's not popular locally, but it's by a station, so that's, you know, that sustainable location is provable. But we have to achieve the maximum from it. And that leaves me with the only option, which is to repeat the same thing that I said at the last meeting, which is that I am going to propose deferment for a full independent assessment based on accurate local figures of the affordable housing potential. So I'm formally proposing that.
Thank you. Before we look for a seconder, I'd like to see if there's any more debate. Councillor Lee.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Well, I mean, this has already been deferred once. It's come back today. And I appreciate the level of feeling in Eggborough surrounding this site. But it's true that wherever any housing is proposed, people object. I've sat on this committee. This is the strategic committee. We look at big developments. I've sat on the local planning committees. I've sat in the public gallery, and I would say 9 times out of 10, people object. People, residents, councillors, we always say, we want housing. We need housing. People need affordable housing. But when it comes to the crunch, it's always the case that we don't want it here. There's always a better site somewhere else, always some other location that would be preferable for a whole host of reasons. So whilst I sympathise with any community, and I've had it in my community, okay, I've had a lot of development in my area. The fact is that we need houses. And leaving aside this committee, but looking at the council as a whole, every member here has sat and voted on policies that purport to support the building of homes for the people. Some of them I've questioned and have been sceptical upon. But we are saying one thing, we are saying we want to build houses, we need houses. We're increasing taxation, we're double taxing people on second homes because we want to build more houses in North Yorkshire. We don't want people going away from North Yorkshire. We're double taxing, triple taxing empty properties. Again, in the claim that we are supporting and want more houses. Now, we can't very well say on one hand that we support all these claims, and we put out these platitudes. Only when it comes then down to looking at applications like this and others, to then start, in my opinion, shirking our responsibilities because we are perhaps afraid to grasp the nettle. Now, the report that has been put forward, and I listened to what Councillor Packham was saying and Councillor Brown, but I've got to trust the officers. I think we've interrogated the officers previously and today on this proposal. And if I look at the benefits, and if you like the disbenefits, let's take the disbenefits. I don't like losing agricultural land. I've spoken out on it before. Even though I've spoken out on it, it doesn't stop things being approved and that land being lost. But again, we have to look at the situation that we are in here in North Yorkshire. We've been punished. The Labour government has punished this county. It's attacked rural areas, and North Yorkshire in particular. It's piled upon us these ridiculous housing numbers, these housing targets. We don't have the land supply. It's a fundamental flaw in this situation. And, you know, although matters of appeal are not material considerations, you have to look and think that, in my opinion, and again, I'd say this is not a matter, this is not a consideration into a material consideration, but, you know, if it went to an inspector, I don't think there'd be a leg to stand on here. So I sympathise with the people of Eggborough. This is a big addition to the village. However, the developer has put forward a proposal. There's a lot of money going in to create additional infrastructure. That is something we have called for before. Maybe there may be not enough. You may be unhappy, but there are proposals there. You're getting a primary school, you're getting the extra care facility, and you're getting houses for families. You're getting families into the community. That's really what you need. We need to create houses. We need to have affordable housing. We need to have a mix. And I feel that on balance, although it's not ideal, I know there are objections. I don't think there's anything here today that can stop us from supporting the officer's recommendations. And I would propose that we do support the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Swires. Got a proposal in a second. We have a proposal first anyway, Councillor Brown's. So yeah, so we'd take yours first if we found a seconder, but we're going to carry on. We'll come back to that in a second if that's all right. Councillor Swires.
Thank you, Chair. Listening to both sides, I think what we need to remember in all this, it was deferred. I'm a bit disappointed with the results of that deferral. You know, we know 10% minimum. It's a lot. It's a big loss. I think what we realise, we do need more housing, but it's quite obvious. But it's a massive ask, and I think for these people, we need to get the best result. If it's to go through, this village needs to have the best result. And to me, we're not giving them anything like the best result. I wasn't able to go to the site visit, as Derek said, because we were on licensing in Scarborough. So I couldn't. The one thing that I was concerned about on the first deferral was the fact of the highway. And like Councillor McCartney has pointed out, I don't think there is I know national highways, they're the experts. I worked on roads all my life. I don't think that is the best road. I think there could have been a lot more money spent, a lot more done to have made that much safer, because the volume of cars is only going to get worse. You know, most houses now have at least 2 cars. Younger people, which were introduced in these new houses, bound to be young families. There's going to be lots and lots of vehicles going onto that motorway. I don't really feel that was adequate for what was needed, but it's only my view, as obviously, as we've said. I don't feel comfortable with this. I feel it's I feel we're sat here, I'm going to be honest, I feel we're sat here looking for a quick fix to get it through. I think the applicant could have move slightly on this 10%. We know they could. And I just think they need to try and appease these people. Yes, I've come from a village. We're in for the same thing eventually, and we will be opposing it because you would. That's human nature. But I do think if it has to be, we must get the best out of it before it goes through. I know there's reserve matters, I get that, but I think at this point is the main point for that turning bit where, you know, we are making a massive decision for these people. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peacock.
Yeah, well, I mean, to me, I'm agreeing with what Andrew was saying behind. Unfortunately, we're in this position where we should be making a decision today. Yes, 10%. I would like to think it's supposed to be 10% minimum, and maybe the developer here might take on board the fact that we should have some more. What I would like to see, which wasn't mentioned in the papers, is houses sold at 30% below market price. That's affordable housing. And we have a lot of young couples who would like to be able to buy outright their houses, and maybe a bit of help from family that can do so. So I'm hoping that the developer, when they're looking at the mix of this 10%, we have some affordable housing to buy outright at 30% below market price. Then it is affordable for our young people. And there's a few points I wasn't over happy. Seeing a beautiful agricultural field was another one. I looked across and saw that, and I thought, you know, you don't like to see it, food production. But, as been mentioned, we sometimes nearly have our hands tied with this. Planners, officers also have their hands tied, because we have been told absolutely outright, you have to build houses. Otherwise, the council will be penalised seriously. But that should never go against the people that live in the area. The one thing that stands out for me, though, is how easy it is to be the commuter place. I mean, it's all very well building 500, 1,000 houses, however many you build. If you haven't got a job, there'll be nobody coming to live in them. So unfortunately, I agree, there probably aren't the local people, but there could be people who could be part of the community, but they would be commuting on them. I couldn't believe it yesterday, because I was expecting to have to go all and Sunday round and about and eventually find this village. Off. And I was. I mean, it was such a shock compared to some site visits that I usually get lost on. Absolutely a fantastic way of getting in and out, which is why it is important that the infrastructure around and that we have the safety. And that's why I was very much keen on looking at the safety, because that building, that school building that we've already have there, regardless of the new one being built, it is going to be used. And it needs to make sure that the people from the village, whether it's educational or community, need to be able to get there safely. So I'm giving the developer here, you have a lot of points to go back and say some of these things need to be made sure of. They don't have to go through planning to make something safer. So, but on that basis, I'm afraid I'd like to say that I would be going to vote that we pass this planning and go forward.
Right, just make a couple of, I've got a few points to make. The idea that banks will voluntarily increase the number of affordable housing is for the birds. It's fantasy. They've had the last 4 years to do that. There is no capacity at Leeds railway station to have any more services from Egborough. The current commuter service, which starts at Nottingley, just down the line from Egborough, is already full to bursting. So these services cannot just be extended to the Egborough line and start the train there, because there is no way they could get on. The idea that this application is sustainable without this railway line being used is absolutely just for the birds. It's just stupid. It can't be. I've been a councillor for over 33 years. I have seen and dealt with hundreds of planning applications, including incinerators, gas-fired power stations, and more recently, battery storage. But this bank's application wins first prize for stupidity. There is no evidence to show that there is any need for 1,500 homes in the south of the Selby locality, despite all the waffle in the officer's report. Has there been an opinion poll asking if 1,500 families actually want to move to Eggborough? I somehow doubt it. This huge estate will instantly become a commuter belt, with 3,000 vehicles bombing off every morning, getting stuck at the level crossing and joining a long queue to get onto the M62. There is nothing green or environmentally friendly about a huge commuter belt. Indeed, it is a disaster for the environment. Turn to the page. We regularly see hares and curlews on this land. We saw 2 hares boxing just a few weeks ago, which was fantastic. They're going to be killed now. I despair at the greed of the landowner and banks. They are a stain on our county. I will be voting against this appalling, unnecessary application, and I hope that colleagues will join me and reject this just ridiculous and unnecessary blot on our landscape. That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Basterman.
Thank you, Chair. I'm more than happy to second Councillor Brown's proposal, as I did do at Selby. And I can't support this today, as officers not shown members the courtesy of bringing back the information we requested at that last meeting. Admittedly, developers have gone some way in addressing our concerns, but there's still more to do. Whilst it sounds awfully patronising maybe, but I often look to Councillor Packham for his wise words and guidance, and I've listened to him today whilst making his statement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Sharma.
Thank you, Chair. I've listened to Councillor Andrew, and I think much of what he says has real substance to it. We do need more houses because we're told we need more houses. I also understand the limitations of the councillors, of the officers' information. 10% is what they are currently allowed to insist upon. But that shouldn't mean that the developer can't offer more, and his insistence on minimum 10% leads me to conclude that there may be a willingness to offer more, and which has just not been forthcoming. And 10% is too little given its location and the basis upon which the officers are forced to make their recommendations. And I think the developer knows that, and the developer should be more forthcoming. And I will support Councillor Brown's recommendation that it be deferred until that information is forthcoming. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Moorhouse.
Thank you. I've struggled with my decision here today. I represent the northern part of North Yorkshire, and we are increasingly facing planning applications. But people have a right to live where they want to live. We don't own a village, we don't own a town, and that is not for us to say that we should look at that and that people can't come and live there and commute. We've done that for years and it will continue, and I accept it's got to be houses for everybody. It does concern me. We've talked about affordable housing, which is a big issue in my area in particular. People are sent to Integrate 8 and who live in Middlesbrough and all over the places and seeing surgeons. We won't go there, but there is a great need for it. And I feel that, as I said earlier, I'm disappointed that it hasn't come back today with a bit more detail, but I accept it's got to go back to a housing association. And there is a breakdown to say in the list here to say how many would be for sale, how many would, I'm on that page there, telling you that some would be for rent and some would for shared ownership. So there is a direction there of travel that they're going to do that. But having looked at that, I really feel that the information isn't there to protect what we've talked about today, and I'm going to support referral really until we get some more information back. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more debate? Right, Councillor Packham.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to make a further comment based on what I've heard. One thing I failed to mention previously, which I think is extremely relevant, and that is that in other circumstances where we had a development of this size, it would normally be generated as a result of a local plan, and it would be a local plan allocation. This was suggested as a local plan allocation, but it hasn't gone through the very complicated process of considering it, which would have enabled all these issues to be properly looked at. So from my point of view, I look at West Harrogate, I look at Maltkiln, and I think, oh, that's interesting. They've managed to go through a full local plan process with those, and they've come to a sensible conclusion, and they've dealt with all the issues. We've not done that with this, and we're not going to be doing it with this, I can tell, which bothers me a lot. I really can't accept that we can simply give planning permission for an ad hoc application for such a large development. It's the thin end of the wedge, isn't it? I've absolutely no problem with extending our settlements. I should know because mine's being extended all the time and will be. But in this particular case, we've got to consider the scale. We've got to consider that it's not been properly considered through the development plan process. And for that reason, I know it's going to be a difficult course, but I'm still going to support Councillor McCartney.
Councillor McCartney.
Yeah, it's working. Just a bit of background on why this site was ever even thought about for housing. 8, 9 years, 10 years ago, Eggborough Power Station was going to close. Kellingley Colliery was going to close. And they were there, they were going to be flattened. And Gascoigne Wood, which is another part of the cove, was going to come up as well. And what was going to happen is we were going to get a lot of employment on those two sites. Hundreds and lots and lots of jobs, and we need to provide somewhere for them to live. And that was true, but the reality now, I went against that a bit. Yeah, we do need the housing for these people, but the reality is, Kellingley Colliery is done and dusted. It's gone. The ship sailed, and most of the people who work there live in West Yorkshire, and the Eggborough Power Station site is pretty much done and dusted as well. So we don't actually need these houses anymore, or this site at all. I mean, Poskett needs him because he's going to become a multi-millionaire instead of to the multi-millionaire. And so we don't really need this site now. And I do come back to where do all these people going to work? And they're going to commute. And this is not a sustainable site. And the site is not needed now for the people who are working locally. And I just think it's absolutely ludicrous to dump a huge estate in a rural village. And it is still a rural village today. It won't be if this goes ahead. It will become a town.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Just wanted to ask, just on what Councillor McCartney was saying, I disagree slightly. I mean, the M62 is identified as being a growth corridor. There's a lot of employers along that area, so I assume that anybody living in this proposed development would avail themselves of opportunities along that growth corridor. But I just wanted to ask if, may, Chairman, perhaps the officers could comment on the issues that have been raised by Councillor Brown in terms of his proposal for the deferment, and on the basis that he has proposed a deferment, what they believe the merit, if there is any, in their opinion, would be in deferring it, or can they not? Are they going to struggle to bring anything further back to us that we haven't already got today for consideration?
Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of deferral, it comes with a big dollop of risk in terms of the amount of time it would actually take to do the viability work and the studies and get that report back in front of members. It's not just a matter of a few weeks. It's a case of that work isn't just looking at Eggborough and the locality. We would have to go further and wider with it to make sure that it is properly sense checked. When we did the work last time round, it was 6 months plus, I think, to get that information together. I can't see the developer wanting to wait 6 months for us to come back if the item was deferred today. I would imagine that they'll probably appeal against non-determination. And that's why I'm talking about the risk factor here, is that we've got a negotiated scheme which has got before you recommended planning conditions, a package of Section 106 measures. When we get to a public inquiry, if that's where we ended up, it's got potential that they could be revisited, and whether we actually get the same package for the community there is obviously something which we can't crystal ball gaze on. It's something to think about. As I say, it is part of that risk if we do defer today. If we look at the figures that you looked at, Councillor Brown, because I know that we touched on things at the site visit yesterday, and the property values you kindly shared the Taylor Wimpey ones with us. I did. My fag packet costings were actually about 290 to 320,000 for the construction costs, probably 70 to 90 for the infrastructure costs, which gave us 430 to 510. But we were not that far out. By the time you look at your developer's profit within that, it's kind of, as I say, in the sweet spot for me in terms of where I would expect a development of this nature to be. I don't know if that helps, but I would imagine we could go through 3 months, 6 months, however long to do that viability work, and it probably just reaffirms us with that general context of where we are. I don't know if any of that helps with you in making a decision, but as I say, it's quite a bit of risk here in terms of what you might get today, what you might not, and what might be left for the future.
Martin?
Nick's given quite a detailed response. I think mine is far more simple. We've had this application put in front of this committee twice. This is the second time. Officers have responded to the requests already. To go back with the same request does have a substantial risk of appeal for non-determination. We'll find ourselves in front of probably a public inquiry, and we may not get the deal that we currently have in front of us out of that process. So as long as members are aware of that risk, I think that is important. I think I would also add that if members are minded to refuse this application, given the recent government direction on housing schemes over 150 dwellings, we would have to refer it to government also for potential call-in. So it would be a minded decision if you're going to move to refuse, again with that potential risk that the government could call this in. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Lee and then Councillor Brown.
Yeah, thank you. And I think the officers confirmed my fears in that we, as members, run the real risk of having this taken out of our hands. And I strongly believe that all decisions relating to North Yorkshire should be taken in North Yorkshire, even if they're unpalatable. And this one is unpalatable to many people. I accept that. But I don't want this being appealed for non-determination by the applicant and the residents receiving an even inferior deal, perhaps to as they see it at the moment. That's not right. We take the decision here. It's in our hands. We stand and fall by our decisions. That's my opinion. So we should grasp the nettle today and make a decision, either yes or no.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I think it's been very helpful that colleagues have outlined the risk level. I'm actually personally prepared to take that risk because I think it's vital that we can satisfy ourselves that the land is being used to best purpose. You know, I repeat, I am not taking the view here that there should be no development. Yeah, nor am I taking a view that I know exactly what the financials of this are and I can put a precise number on what the affordables should be. What I'm stating is that nobody in this room is in a position to have accurate independent figures on what the cost benefit analysis of it is and what the potential for affordables are. And it is deeply irresponsible of us to make a decision without up-to-date information of that. I understand that officers think we should rely on the 2022 report, but as we've had explained to us by Councillor Packham, there must be doubts cast on that because the local plan did not go forward, it was not tested, and therefore it seems an unreliable policy basis on which to work. I would ask any appeal body that's looking at this to ask themselves, have they got proper, accurate information that enables them to judge whether this land is being used to best purpose? And if they've not, then they are not being policy compliant themselves, in my view. So I continue with the proposal, which has been seconded, that we should defer until we have an up-to-date independent assessment of the potential for affordable housing.
Councillor Basterman.
Thank you, Chair. And I hear what Councillor Lee said about difficult decisions made in North Yorkshire. Applications in North Yorkshire, decisions should be made in North Yorkshire. I'm grateful for officers advising us of the risks we take, but we are elected members and we nearly take risk with every decision we make in this chamber and any other building. But difficult decisions are made easier when we've got all the relevant facts, as we requested last time, and we didn't get everything we asked for. So no doubt in deferring it, we will get the relevant information, which will make it easier to make the decision. And like Councillor Brown, I'm not against development on the site, but I'll only make a decision when I've got all the relevant information. Thanks.
Exhausted the debate. Officers, anything you'd want to add? So
we had a move from Bob to refuse.
Well, we take the first one first, and then we've got Councillor Lees. And did Bob table a motion?
No, I actually seconded what Councillor McCartney had said, in fact.
Which is to refuse.
No, Councillor Brown's was first. So we'd have to take Councillor Brown's first. I'll check with the legal officer because I am known to get things wrong. Thank you.
No, I'm sorry, John. I did actually say at the beginning that I hadn't made up my mind, which at that point I hadn't.
Yes. No, it didn't. Right. Fran, which one do we take first? Councillor Brown's. Councillor Brown's. The motion is to defer. All those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? None. Motion carried. We'll take a 5-minute break while the gallery is cleared and we'll move on to the next item. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for bearing with us. We restart the meeting. As I have an interest in this next item, I now declare that I'm leaving the room and Councillor Packham will be the Vice Chair, will take over the meeting. Thank you very much.
We're working on it.
Thank you. Good.
Right, so as Councillor Paraskos says, he's left the chamber because he's declared an interest in the next application, which is 25-02006 Outmatch outline application for residential development of up to 210 dwellings, use class C3, all matters reserved except partial means of access, but not within the site on land at Harrogate Road, Wetherby. And I think the starting point on this, if you've seen it, will have to be the officer update, which you should all have seen by now. And the officer update states, since completion, the publication of the officer's report, several late representations have been received challenging various matters and raising concerns about the published report. Due to the volume and substance of the late representations, the officer's update recommendation is for members to defer consideration of the matter to allow officers sufficient time for proper consideration of the representations received. And the officer goes on to say that briefly, the points collectively seek clarification of the housing land supply position, clarity over the application of MPPF 11D, and clear justification for GS3, NE8 and Habitat Regulations conclusions. They also request alignment of the infrastructure requirements through the proposed 106 legal agreement, including commentary on how assessment has been made for cross-boundary education and highways contributions. Further comments have been made regarding noise, air quality and cumulative environmental impacts. So that's the officer's current recommendation, which is to defer it. I'm in your hands. Do we accept that recommendation or do we want to debate further? Move to Philip. Yeah, so we had a proposal from Councillor Brown and Councillor McCartney. Yeah, in many places. So all in favour of that deferral, please. Anyone against? That's carried. Thank you. Right, so moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is motions, and there aren't any. No, sorry, any other item. Now, there is another item. Councillor Brown would like to address the committee and the chair has agreed to that. Thank you.
Well, I'd welcome an update from officers on the Burnaston fracking environment and agency situation. Just could you clarify how that application by the developer to the Environment Agency sits with our own processes and how members are being informed about any response we might make to that submission?
I think there may be a problem here, Councillor Brown, if the officers that are dealing with that situation, with that application are not here, but we can do an update apparently.
I would certainly have to look at it into a little bit more detail, Councillor Brown, but my understanding is that an application has been made to the Environment Agency for a permit, but that's outside the remit of planning. It's about an environmental permit rather than a planning related issue. So I understand that the council's environmental health team may have been contacted on that matter, but it's not a matter for the local planning authority. But I will look into it further and give you a full update.
Just for my own understanding, so they would not be able to proceed with their drilling until the planning application had been determined. Is that what you're telling me?
That's correct.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I think that's the last of the new items. So I close the meeting. Date of the next meeting, Tuesday the 8th. Sorry, I didn't have my glasses on. Thank you. 8th of September 2026. Thank you very much. That was quick.